We talked about this game. We talked about it as soon as the schedule came out. We saw week 4, October 3rd. Patriots, Buccaneers, the return of Tom Brady to Foxborough. And we hyped, and listen, especially living in Boston, I think it was a full-time sport. Talking about the Patriots on the side and the Buccaneers and Tom Brady full-time. There were lots of sponsorships for Tom Brady programs, Coach Dungy. It was on and on. And it lived up to the hype. It was a dramatic game. 30 million people watched it on NBC. Most watched game in 9 years on Sunday Night Football. Part of that coverage, our guest, Hall of Fame football coach, Tony Dungy. Tony, how you doing today?
Michael, I'm doing well, but I'm exhausted too. We started our meetings at 9 o'clock in the morning. I worked until maybe 1:30 the next morning, and it was all football, all Patriots, Bucs, Tom Brady. But it was exciting, and it was well worth it. It was tremendous.
You know, Michael Smith's not here, Coach, and we always talk about relationships. We talk about relationships at home, relationships at work. And that's what stood out to me, and I'd love to get your take on this. What stood out to me about the entire game was not the game itself, it was post-game. I said this to Michael yesterday. I just was moved, very much so, by seeing everybody come up to Tom Brady, whether it was former teammates, whether it was coaches, members of the staff. He had his time with Robert Kraft before the game, their PR people before the game. And it just seems to me that when we're watching the game as fans, we focus so much on all the action on the field, the great action on the field, but I would say you really feel the presence of a player, of a special player, when he's gone, because you think about the relationships that were forged while he was there. Is that a fair characterization?
You are so right, and we had a camera on Tom Brady almost 24/7 from the time he stepped off the plane. And you saw it with the townspeople, with the fans, with the people at the hotel. We had the camera on him pregame in the tunnel coming into the stadium, and he's stopping and talking to people that I didn't recognize, but were obviously very important to him. Sure, we saw Robert Kraft and we saw him talk to Drew Brees, but he talked to 10 people in the tunnel that were probably security people, staff people, maintenance people, and that's what people don't understand. It is not just the scoreboard. It's not just the Super Bowl rings. It is those relationships that had been built over 20 years. And for one, I didn't see how he was going to play well with all of those things built up, but he did. He did a good job managing the emotions and getting the job done.
Yeah, it's you think about all the people that he sees. That's part of it. But then going back to Gillette Stadium, I mean, it's crazy. Tom Brady was going to the visitors' locker room. I mean, coming out at a different time with a Buccaneer on his helmet as he looks up and sees 6 championship banners that he was very much a part of hanging there in the Gillette Stadium sky. So, yeah, that had to be very emotional. But you talk about the way he played. You coached against him. And I've heard people say he looks the same or better than he did, 15 years ago. And I find that hard to believe. I know he's playing at a very high level at 44, but from a coaching standpoint, do you think Tom Brady is playing at a higher level now than he did in his mid-20s or even early 30s?
He is doing some things better, Michael. The decision-making is so quick and so fast. I think his accuracy is a little better. His arm strength doesn't seem to be that much off to me. So I think all in all, probably not the mobility and, some things that you could kind of nitpick with. But all in all, I think he's playing at a better level, doing some things better than he did when I was there 13 years ago.
Tony, I said to Gary Carter, one of our producers before the show, I said, look, when we talk to these coaches, when we talk to experts in different fields, we gotta steal some of their knowledge, the things that we're watching the game, but they're seeing a different game. And that's you. You have been involved in this game your entire life, especially from a coaching perspective. I'm just wondering, what did the Patriots do, or what did you see schematically that may have led to Tom Brady not really, he's barely 50% on his passes. Any coverages, were they mixing up? Like, what were they doing that may have caused him to be just a little bit off on Sunday night?
And Rodney Harrison and I, we've sat next to each other for 12 years on Football Night in America. And Rodney has always said, to play against Tom Brady, you have to get pressure up the middle, right at him, and then you've got to play tight man-to-man coverage, force him not to play zone, not to have easy outlet throws, but make him make a lot of precise throws. He's going to make some great ones, but you got to live with those and be ready to deal with the consequences. And that's what they did. They played man-to-man. Not having Rob Gronkowski was a big hindrance to them because that mismatch they didn't have, and that's where Tom likes to go against man-to-man coverage. So they put their best defender on Mike Evans. They made it tough. Evans made some plays. Antonio Brown made some plays on the number 3 corner. But they just said, we're going to live with this and hope that he's a 50% passer. Tom, I think, was a little bit caught up in the situation. He missed some balls that he normally hits. He probably had 5 or 6 balls that maybe were just a little bit off. He had 3 or 4 other balls that if Rob Gronkowski's there, those are easy completions as opposed to Cameron Brate being a little better covered or not as big a target. So instead of being 62%, he was a little above 50, and that was the difference. But there was nothing here's this scheme that came out of the blue, or they did something that no one else did. They lined up and played.
Yeah, I thought it would be something like that. Imagine, you spend 20 years with the player, and the player spends 20 years with you, and they pick up things that you don't even realize they pick up from your commentary, and vice versa. So it's really this whole tug where no one really has an advantage because everybody just knows so much about the opponent. And the Patriots were taking on, essentially, they were taking on their offense just with better personnel and clearly a better quarterback. I'm going to switch gears and go from talking about a 44-year-old quarterback to somebody a generation younger. I mentioned him off the top. Justin Herbert had his 500th completion last night, Coach, and he hadn't even played 20 games in the league. And it makes me wonder if we overthink young quarterbacks sometimes, because the only reason we saw Justin Herbert last year was a doctor's error in Los Angeles with Tyrod Taylor before the game. Tyrod Taylor was their starter. And, okay, you can tell me if I'm wrong. Tell me if I'm crazy. I won't take it personally. I know we have great respect for each other, so go ahead. You can make fun of me if you want. I find it hard to believe.
I know where you're going, and you're absolutely right. I sit and I hear all these people, don't put the guy in, let him sit and learn. It makes no sense to me, especially in this day and age when you got to find out about people in their 3rd or 4th year. It makes no sense. If I wasn't there when Peyton Manning was a rookie, but if I had told him, you know what, you're going to just sit and watch Kelly Holcomb play, and you're going to learn, you're going to take 10% of the snaps in practice, and you're going to just learn the pro game, he would have looked at me like I was nuts. And you see it over and over and over again. These guys who come in, Peyton Manning threw 28 interceptions. They won 3 games his first year. Yes, it wasn't pretty, but you know what? He learned from that. He grew, and getting probably 700 throws to Marvin Harrison in practice that year because he was getting the first team reps. Well, now the next year and the year after that, it pays off. And that's just what happened with Justin Herbert. And that's just what happened with Andrew Luck. And I've got to give a little shout out. The common denominator between Andrew Luck being Rookie of the Year and playing great as a rookie and Justin Herbert doing the same thing was Pep Hamilton as a quarterback coach. And you get guys who know how to develop quarterbacks and you pour into them and let them play. That's how they get better.
All right, so yeah, I can see that. You talk about young quarterbacks playing, and maybe the wins aren't there in the beginning, but they're better for the experience. Now, this is a little different story, a different part of Florida than you're in right now. I know you're in Tampa, but go up a little bit to Jacksonville. Yes, you got Trevor Lawrence, young quarterback. Wins are going to be tough to come by, but the situation is a little more complicated than that. What do you make? I know there's a lot there, with Shad Khan coming out and saying, hey, Urban Meyer has to earn the trust and credibility of us and his players. What do you make of that situation, and where, if you had to point it out, I mean, there are probably several areas where Urban went wrong, but where can he learn? What area can he learn from most, in your estimation?
Well, everything that happened before this past week, to me, that you kind of live with that. And would I have, made Trevor Lawrence go through a competition to win the job? No, I wouldn't have. But that's the quarterback. I mean, that's the coach's decision. And some of the things that he's done, the way he's run practice. But I can tell you this, Michael, I played football for probably 16 years total. I coached it for 28 years. I never went to a game where the head coach didn't come back with my team. Me, myself, for 13 years as a head coach, 15 years as an assistant, 15 years playing. When the head coach went to a game, when we returned, the head coach came back with us. So that, to me, I just don't know how you do that and say, hey, I'm going to stay in Ohio when you guys go back after the game. That was the mistake to me. What happened in the bar or whatever, that's secondary. You go back with your team. We finished by getting home and getting everybody. It's your responsibility as the head coach to make sure everybody lands on that plane safe, everybody gets back to the facility. Then you do what you have to do.
Yeah, and that's a great point, because I thought about that with the players. See, the players, and I said off the top, Tony, that they're not on scholarship now. They're not looking at you as the key to getting to the NFL. They're not looking for you to talk to your sources so they can go from being a third-round pick to a second-round pick or ultimately a first-round pick. They're already in the league, and so they see themselves as peers. It's like grown men. It's a peer relationship. How does he get those guys back? And Shad Khan said in that statement, he's got to get credibility and trust. How does he get that credibility and trust with those players who look at him and say, man, you weren't even here with us after a tough loss?
That is very, very difficult. And he's going to have to work at that. And to be honest, I don't know how that will get done. But you're exactly right. I mean, we're always telling our players, we ride together, we're in this together. And then to say, well, hey, we've got 4 off days, so I'm going to stay here in Ohio with my family while you guys go back home. And, we're kind of dismissing things from here. I just don't think as a leader you do that, because you're sending a message, maybe subliminally, that you guys aren't as important to me as some things I have to do off the field. So I think he's going to have to work. It's going to take some time. I hope he does get it back. I think they have some building blocks to be a very good team down the road. But this is going to be a tough one for Urban Meyer to overcome.
So you left Foxborough, exhausting and exhaustive coverage of Patriots Buccaneers. Now, Football Night in America, we've got a replay of the AFC Championship game, Buffalo, Kansas City. Kansas City back to 500. Buffalo shutting people down after that opening loss to Pittsburgh. What do you see in this game? And do you think that Buffalo has, I know it was competition last week, not great, but do you think Buffalo has learned from last year and has gone to that next level?
I think Buffalo has improved, and some of the things that they had to do to improve, they've addressed. They needed to get some more pass rush, and they addressed that in the draft and in their off season. They needed to be better running the ball and giving Josh Allen some alternatives, and they've done that. It sure looks like their run game is better. They're playing with energy and emotion, and they're playing like things. This is a meaningful part of the season. Kansas City is playing like they're kind of bored to me. We're good, and we know we're good. We can explode anytime we want. So these first halves we'll experiment a little bit, and then we'll really turn it on in the second half. I think Kansas City has to get back to work and get down to business. And maybe the fact that, hey, we lost to the Chargers. Now we've got Buffalo coming in. They look really good. Maybe that's going to be the wake-up call that the Chiefs need.
Think about that, Tony. You're so good that you can afford to be bored, and know that you can turn it on at any minute. Like, even if Kansas City doesn't win the division, I don't want to say they can just be casual, but even if they don't win the division, they're probably going to make the playoffs. And if you face them in the playoffs, you're probably going to be uncomfortable knowing that you're facing Kansas City, whether it's at home or on the road, right?
Oh, I promise you, no one would want to play them. Their defense isn't playing great, but you just look at how quickly they can score, how they can explode, all the weapons they have. And then even on defense, you know, Chris Jones hasn't really been the Chris Jones we're used to seeing. Frank Clark hasn't hardly played at all. When those guys get rolling, that makes them a different team. So, you know, everything isn't there yet, and it's probably too early to push the panic button, but I would like to see them play a little more disciplined, play a little more sound, and play with a little more passion, especially in the first half of these games.
Tony, it's always a pleasure. Next time you come back, Michael will be here. I will tell Michael, in the meantime, I'll tell him, hey, Tony was on. He agreed with everything I had to say. He said I was right and you were wrong. So.
Well, let's do that.
That's just what brothers do, right?
Then he'll tell both of us why we were wrong, correct?
Yeah, he will. But hey, listen, I always enjoy talking with you, brother. We'll check in with you soon. Enjoy Sunday Night Football, Buffalo, Kansas City. We'll check in with you later.